A Colorado father has been charged with murdering his pregnant wife and two young children. But Chris Watts now claims that he only killed his wife after she strangled his two daughters. Watts appeared in court today. He faces 9 felony charges, including 5 counts of first-degree murder. Watts told police that after he told his wife, Shanann, that he wanted to separate, she killed their girls. And according to his affidavit, that led him to strangle her out of a fit of rage. Well, Watts then reportedly dumped the children in oil tanks near his job site and buried their mom nearby a shallow grave. CBS News correspondent Omar Villafranca has been following this story and joins us now from Colorado with more. So, Omar, we know the family of Shanann Watts was in court today. What was their reaction to this entire ordeal?
Well, the father and the brother were there. Frankie Ruzek and Frank Ruzek Sr. were there in court. They were led in by the bailiffs, and they sat down, and it was interesting to watch because the father kept his eye contact the whole time on Chris Watts. At one point, a bailiff was in his line of sight, and he leaned forward to make sure that his eyes were always on Chris Watts. The judge started reading the charges, starting with the first murder charge of Shanann Watts. He was able to keep his head up, but the second the judge went into the second murder charge, talking about the little girls, the grandfather lost it. He basically put his face in his hands and was sobbing, and he was shaking. His son had to rub his back, and people around him were telling him it was okay. The only time he looked up, he always kept his focus on Chris Watts. And matter of fact, after everything was read and the attorneys were talking to the judge just on some clerical issues for the future, all rise, the judge stood up, everybody stood up, and he did not want to leave until Chris Watts walked by him. He was keeping eye contact the whole time. This is a man that was angry. He was shaking his head, and you could tell not only he's in shock and saddened because he lost his daughter and his 2 grandkids, but he wanted to make sure that Chris Watts knew he was there.
Yeah, you can't even imagine what it's like for this family and everything that they're going through, Omar. You know, it's just so fascinating that this was a man who initially went on TV, pretended not knowing where his wife and kids were, had a whole sob story. So how does he have any evidence to back up his claim?
Well, what's interesting is that, first of all, the prosecutor doesn't believe his story. That's why he's charged with 5 counts of murder and 3 counts of tampering with evidence and 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy, 9 felonies. The prosecutor doesn't believe any of it. The defense is building their case. They filed a motion that was granted by the judge that is allowing the coroner to get a DNA sample from around the girls' necks. That they're trying to build their case with the story that he has told prosecutors that it was the wife who strangled the 2 kids. They're obviously still gathering some of that information. This is going to be a long, long while. We're not going to be in court again until mid to late November. So at this point, they're still gathering evidence, both sides building their cases and building their arguments.
And Omar, you actually asked about the possibility of the death penalty yesterday. When and how exactly will that be determined?
Well, and for a little background, Colorado does have the death penalty. They are one of the states that does use it, but they haven't executed anybody in roughly about 20 years. So it's not something, they're not like other states like Texas, which there's several people who are executed a year. They haven't done it in a while. I asked the district attorney, he said, you know, it's too early in the case. I asked him why, because they are filing charges. He says he has 63 days till after the arraignment to make that decision on whether they want to bump up these charges from basically first-degree murder to pursue the death penalty. They're not tipping his hand on what kind of information they have yet. And matter of fact, both sides haven't even, had discovery yet. They don't know what the other side has yet. They're still trying to share that information before the trial starts. But it's something that people are watching, especially if the prosecution thinks that they can prove their case that this is somebody who apparently killed his 2 daughters first, then killed his wife, and then hid the bodies.
So many turns to this story. Omar Villafranca, so grateful you could be on the ground and reporting this. Thank you so much, Omar.